Now we'll talk about sleep and consciousness. I thought this was a fun part to learn about because I didn't know these things, so that's cool. We'll talk about the 5 stages of sleep. So stage 1 is when you're still awake but relaxed and you're about to enter sleep. Stage 2 is when you're starting to become disengaged from your surroundings. Stage 3 is going from a light to deep sleep. Stage 4 is being in a deep sleep and it's difficult to waken. And then your REM stage, and this is the most important, and this is what gives your body energy and your brain and your body its energy back. So a lot of sleep deprived people will just automatically enter the REM stage, which is not healthy. You're supposed to go through all 4 stages of sleep before you enter the REM stage. But because if you enter the REM stage immediately, you're not getting the energy boosting stem or things you need, waves you need. Whereas, so you're waking up just as tired as you went to bed. The REM stage isn't supposed to happen until 90 minutes into your sleep. So if you skip those 4 stages and you just enter right into REM, you're not getting that first 90 minutes of sleep. And they're important because the first 4 stages is when your body starts to slow down, your heart rate goes down, your body temperature goes down, and this is what really relaxes you for the REM stage. A lot of people don't realize that in the REM stage, you're like a dog and your eyes dart back and forth, so you're like, so if you've ever watched a dog and you can see his eyes moving and his legs moving, and that's how we look. We just didn't know that because we're always sleeping. Fun fact. Next we have levels of consciousness. So 3 levels are: 1, consciousness, tip of the iceberg; 2, subconscious, middle of the iceberg; and 3, unconsciousness, which is the bottom of the iceberg. So the tip of the iceberg, consciousness, you're fully aware, you totally know what's going on around you. So when your best friend is telling you about how her boyfriend is such a jerk for not getting her flowers on Valentine's Day, you're listening. It's not going through what you're completely listening, fully listening. It's not going through one ear and out the other, and you're giving feedback. You're giving advice to her. You're actually listening to her. You're fully aware. Second stage is your subconscious, middle of the iceberg, right on top of the water. And this part of your conscious is always working, always. So when you're driving to your grandma's house, and you're thinking about why the guy you like didn't text you, this is what gets you from your house to grandma's house, is your subconscious. Because your subconscious knows the way, so it's working to remind you where you're going. Finally, the unconscious level, which is the bottom of the iceberg, completely under the water. This is when you're sleeping and you're dreaming. You don't really know what you're thinking, but you're thinking it. This has a lot to do with Sigmund Freud. He had a lot to do with the unconscious mind, studying it. He believed, what's in your unconscious mind is what you're really feeling when you're dreaming and you're sleeping. This is what you really believe, and you may not even know it. You may not even know that you think these things because it's in your unconscious mind. So that's what we're going to talk about next, is the most important of psychology. They're what makes psychology possible, what makes it real, what made it what it is today. So we're going to talk about the theorists. Yay. We'll start with Abraham Maslow, and he had a hierarchy of needs. So first we have the psychological needs. This is being fed when you're a baby, being held, being loved by your parents, Once you reach those needs, you go to safety needs. This is feeling safe in your environment, with the people you're with, feeling safe with your caregivers, things like that. Then you have your belonging needs. This is your need to feel like you belong somewhere, like you have a place in the world with your friends, at school, with your family. That's what the belonging needs are. And then once you feel like you belong, you work on your esteem needs. Just that one. And this is the hardest needs to get out of, because this is where you boost your self-esteem, you feel confident in yourself. And a lot of people don't get out of this stage because they never truly feel content with themselves or happy with themselves. So that's what that is. And then once you do get out of that stage, you have your self-accusation stage. And this is just a stage where you finally feel content. You just feel you've reached all your needs and you're a complete person. Then we have Lawrence Kohlberg, who was a developmental psychologist who theorized that every person goes through the 3 stages of cognitive development called motor development. So the 3 stages are pre-conventional, which is 6 and younger, conventional, 7 through 11, and post-conventional, which is 11 and older. The first stage, pre-conventional, this is where adults impose their wisdom on children. You know, they tell them what they think is right and wrong because it's their wisdom, and the kids don't really grasp what right and wrong. They don't really grasp what right and wrong is. They don't really know what it means. They're just doing it because they're doing it, and because, the adults say it's right. They don't really grasp the idea of it. The second one is where, second stage, conventional, this is all about expectations. People do things because it's expected by others, like a teenager going to a party because they think it's expected by their friends and they want to make their friends happy, so they do it. Or sex, even, like having sex with someone because they think it'll make them happy, and it's expected and it's the right thing to do. A lot of people don't get out of this stage because the need to please others and to fulfill other people's expectations is so high in this society. Everybody's so eager to make everybody else happy, so a lot of people don't get out of this stage. But if they do, they reach the post-conventional stage, and in this stage, people behave based on their own beliefs, on what they think is right or wrong, not what someone else thinks is right and wrong. They do something because they, in their heart, believe it's the right thing to do. So, that's Lawrence Kohlberg. Next, we'll talk about Sigmund Freud here. So I can get the paper. So, Sigmund Freud developed the theory that the unconscious mind influences an individual's behavior. So, I said this before. He believed that what was in your unconscious mind was what really is what you were thinking. There's even a thing called the Freudian slip, where, like, if you call your teacher mom, it's not because you think she's your mom, it's because your unconscious mind wants her to be your mom. It's weird, I know, but that's what Sigmund Freud believed in. He developed this theory after his father died. He started to self-talk to himself. He called it self-assess, or self-talk. And he would just try to figure out what was in his unconscious mind and really see what he was thinking. So, then we have Jean Piaget, He was a developmental theorist who believed that all people enter the 4 stages of cognitive development. And cognitive is like your mental development. It's what you, it's how your brain develops, pretty much. So those 4 stages are the sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational. So the first stage is where the baby just you're a baby, lives in the moment, does what it wants. They have this thing where if it's out of sight, it doesn't exist anymore. So if they're playing with a ball and it drops on the floor, that's it. The ball doesn't exist anymore. It can't be picked up again. It can't be recreated. It just doesn't exist anymore. They also suffer from stranger anxiety. If someone picks them up who they don't know, they'll cry, they'll scream, they'll freak out because they don't know this person, and that scares them. The second stage is where the toddler is learning language, learning how to say what they want. They're developing words and such. They do a lot of pretend play, like in kindergarten, play house, fairies and unicorns, things like that. And they're very selfish at this age. Not because, they want to be selfish, but it's just their mental development hasn't reached to where they're not selfish anymore. They're just selfish, very selfish. The third stage is where they've mastered the concept of conversation. They can hold a full conversation with somebody and, talk and be talked to back and things like that. They can also think logically about concrete events. So, say if, a student got a B on an English paper, he can think logically, okay, why did I get this B? Was it because the content wasn't correct? Was the length not long enough? Things like that. He can think logically about that concrete event. And then the final stage, the the post-conventional stage, is where the person is fully cognitively developed. He has full cognitive reasoning. He can hypothesize, make prediction, things like that. And they can logically reason about things, not just concrete things, but things that haven't happened yet. Like, if I do this, then this will happen, sort of thing. So, if I throw my phone on the ground, it'll probably break. They can think logically about the consequences of that event, not just something that has recently happened. So those are Jean Piaget and his 4 stages of cognitive development. Finally, we have Erik Erikson, and he was a developmental theorist who believes all people go through 8 stages of social development. So here are the 8 stages. 1. Trust versus mistrust. 2. Anonymity versus shame and doubt. 3. Initiative versus guilt. 4. Competence versus inferiority. 5. These 2 are kind of mixed up. So 5. Identity role versus identity confusion. 6. Intimacy versus isolation. 7. Generativity versus stagnation. And 8. Integrity versus despair. So those were his 8 stages, and I'm going to talk about those. So in trust versus mistrust, the infant believes, if the infant's needs are met, it develops trust and it trusts others. But if they aren't met, they mistrust everybody. They don't trust anyone. Like, if a mother never holds their baby, then the person will probably never trust women in the future. Next is anatomy versus shame and doubt. This is where toddlers learn to exercise the will and to do things for themselves. And if they don't, they learn to doubt their abilities. Like, if the parent never lets them do things on their own, they start to, think, well, I can't do it, so I should just let her do it for me. Third stage is initiative versus guilt. This is where preschoolers learn to initiate tasks and carry out plans, or they feel guilty if they don't get that need met. They feel guilty about efforts of to be independent. So if they don't learn how to carry things out on their own and to take the initiative, they just won't, and they'll feel guilty about it, about wanting to be independent. So the fourth stage is competence versus inferiority. This is where children learn the pleasure of applying themselves to tasks, or they feel inferior. So they either learn to, raise their hand in class, or they learn to always be silent in fear of being told that they're wrong. Next we have identity role versus identity confusion, and this is where adolescent children, high school, really need to learn to figure out who they are. And if they can't find a role in society that identifies well with them, they feel confused. They feel like they don't belong in this society. They feel isolated, and they won't try to find that themselves. Next we have the sixth stage, which is intimacy versus isolation. This is where young adults struggle to form close relationships and to gain for intimate love, or they feel socially isolated. So they try to find, that social or that intimate relationship with another person, whether it be same sex, gender, different sex, whatever you prefer. I'm not one to judge. Or if they can't find it, they feel isolated from the world. They start to not want to be around others, and because they feel like they don't deserve it. The seventh stage is generativity versus stagnation, and this is where the adult discovers a sense of contributing to the world through family or work or charity, or they may feel a lack of purpose. So that's stagnation. If they don't feel like they're contributing to the society, they just feel like they don't have any reason to be here. So why are they here? And finally, we have integrity versus despair, and this is where adults in their late adulthood, they reflect on their life, and they either feel a sense of satisfaction, which is integrity, or despair, where they feel like they failed. So if an adult feels like they failed, they'll look back on their life and think, I didn't do well by my family, or I didn't do well by myself. So that's Erik Erikson for you. And those are the theorists that we learned about this semester.